Welcome once again. My name is Nelson Karanja, and this is God and I, the Creative Locus. Today, I just want to have a short video, just more of a conversation about God. Sometimes we get so busy, we hardly ever get time to just take a moment and pause and think about God. Who is God? Take random 100 people, ask them, who is God? You'll probably get 100 different answers, because there seems to be no one universal understanding of who God is. And that's why if you check around, even on social media, you will find there are some who will say, yes, God is the creator of the universe. Another one will not dare call him God. As a matter of fact, there are people who would not want to hear the word God. You will hear of the infinite intelligence, the universal creator, the supreme consciousness. And there are so many versions of who God is, or who the creator is, the supreme being. And I want to just use my own belief, because I will not call God the infinite intelligence, as much as I know he is intelligent beyond measure. He's actually the infinite intelligence. But I don't shy away from calling him God, because that is who he is to me, and that is my understanding. And for purposes of this discussion, I will use the Christian Bible, and I will definitely widen it up according to the many people I've interacted with, who may not probably be looking at the Bible. They are looking at a different book altogether, the Quran and all the other books that are there from so many different religions. But God is one. It does not matter who you are, where you were born, what is your belief system. That whom you call God is whom another one calls the infinite intelligence, is the one they are also referring to the universe, each based on their own understanding. When Paul went to a certain place and found people worshiping so many gods, and they had so many idols, one for this god, another one for a different purpose, and these people seemed to have probably accommodated all the gods they could think of. And eventually they had one statue to which they had ascribed to the unknown God. And Paul, talking to these wise men as they debated about God, he told them, I'm here to proclaim to you that unknown God, the one that you can't figure out, the one that you leave just in case you have not captured the essence of God. There are belief systems where there are multiple gods. If you check it out, you will realize that man was born to acknowledge a supreme being, one who has the ultimate authority, control over life. And therefore, allow me to start today's conversation. It's not a preaching, really. It's more of a reflection, and maybe just me putting out thoughts on what I believe about God. I will go to Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. It says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And right there, it kind of puts us in a very awkward position. Because if in the beginning God created the heaven and the earth, then the beginning we are talking about here is not the beginning of God. It's the beginning of mankind. It's the beginning of heaven and earth. And God does not give us enough to argue with him to help us understand, why is he starting here? Where did he come from? And that trips a lot of people, because we want to know, if in the beginning God created, where did he come from? Who created him? Because if somebody else created God, then that must be God. And, so where did God come from? And I've been on this planet by the grace of God for sufficient number of years to know that there is not enough time to figure out God. The way I see it is like, if when I was in my mother's womb, if I were to figure out my mother, in whom I am in, I don't think I could handle that. That when we are told it is in God that we live and move and have our being, that the entire universe is all in God. We are all in God. That is mind-boggling, to say the least. And I would imagine that instead of trying to figure out everything, because like I said, if you tell a baby in the mother's womb, that fetus, that it's still growing, it's not eating, it can't even breathe with its own nostrils, it has to be fed through this umbilical cord. And you are to have a conversation with that life form at that point, which was me at some point. And this is why I believe there is God. At that point, the whole concept of my mother and me being in my mother, that is not anything I would actually comprehend. That my entire universe, everything I am, is contained in another being. And to tell me that there will come a time when I will leave this world, this universe that I'm in, inside my mother's womb, that there will come a time when I will no longer be fed the way I am fed with this cord. There will come a time when I will need to use my mouth to eat. I'll breathe with my own nostrils. I will walk around in a vast universe. That probably is a conversation that I would find very utopian. I would find it more like fantasy, because I was of limited knowledge and understanding. So at this point, when the Bible says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, it does not give us an opportunity to ask a question, and where did you come from? That is a journey that can only be understood as we mature, as we get on this spiritual journey and you start to comprehend, just like the way we are born, and as we grow up, the mystery of childbirth, of being born, growing, that mystery starts to take its own shape, and we start to understand what that was all about. And I believe there are things that we will never understand until we have exited this world. So he says, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And the only other place where we are told about the beginning is in the book of John. I don't want to say it is the only other place, but in the book of John, chapter 1, from verses 1 to 3, and I'll read again from 7 to 9. It says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. So God, who created the heaven and the earth in the beginning, now we are told, in the beginning, He was the Word, He was with the Word. In other words, this Word was God. And this is the mystery that has baffled generations. It doesn't matter where you come from. This whole aspect of the Word. Verse 2 says, the same was in the beginning with God. Again, leaving us no room to understand what was there before that beginning. Because if you say, in the beginning, so-and-so did this, that means that's not their beginning. So where were they? Where was God? And I don't want to dwell too much on that, because it would only raise other questions. You hear people debating, if you talk to many Christians, they will say, oh, the earth is maybe a couple of thousand of years old, because maybe they count from Jesus to now, probably 2,000 and something years, or, and before that, you can count back. And then comes the scientist who tells us of millions of years and all that. There is a lot that one would not probably understand. But again, it depends on how you want to understand it. Do you want to understand it with a rational mind, or do you want to embark on a spiritual journey, because God is spirit? He says, all things were made by Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. In Him was life, and the life was the light of men. That is up to verse 4. In Him was life, and this life that was in God, that life which is still in God, it is the light of men. And we will get back to that, even if not on this episode. I'll jump to verse 7, from verse 6 actually. He says, there was a man sent from God, whose name was John. The same came for a witness, to bear witness of the light, that all men through him might believe. He was not that light, but was sent to bear witness of that light. This is John the Baptist who came before Jesus Christ. We are told he came as a witness to witness about this light. He was not the light. But verse 9 is where I want us to spend some time and maybe have a conversation that goes beyond religion. It goes beyond Christianity. It goes beyond the Islam belief or the Buddhist or those who believe nothing. Verse 9 is crucial to understanding God, or he that you call the infinite intelligence, the one that you call the universe, the one that you call Mother Earth. Whatever name you give him, I would challenge you to read this verse. Verse 9 says, that was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. Right there. Herein is the mystery of God and I, God and the human being, that this true light is the light that lights or gives light to every man that cometh into the world. Pause for a moment and ask yourself, if there was no God, or if there was no one supreme creator who actually gives light to every child born into this earth, and not only human beings but also animals, they are given the breath of life. They are given life. But to the humankind who definitely has been given something beyond what has been given to the animal. An animal has a body, an animal has a soul, but an animal, there is no evidence that it has a spirit. The human being, on the other hand, has all three. So, this is why I believe God is universal. Doesn't matter where you were born. Ask yourself, why is it that a baby born, the cry is the same? I don't think there is an African cry of a baby. I don't think there is a Caucasian or Asian cry. When a baby is born, the cry is the same. All babies, when we are born, we come into this world the same way, simply because we were prepared the same way in our mother's womb, where we entirely depended on God to guide us through. It is in our mother's womb where we were prepared for this world by God himself. If we arrived in this world without knowing how to use our mouths to suckle, without knowing how to use our nostrils to breathe, and our lungs having been prepared to take in air, we wouldn't last even a couple of minutes. And yet, that we take for granted, that every child born comes the same way. It doesn't matter whether it's white, black, red, or green, or whatever color you are in. All mankind is born the same way. That tells us there is one who controls that. And because of defiance of man, man spends vast amounts of time trying to get God out of their lives, trying to emerge as not needing God. But this is the catch, that God has set eternity in the heart of man. Man instinctively knows that they are not in this world forever. Man instinctively knows there is a higher power. Even the atheist who claims they don't believe in God believe that there is some life force, some power somewhere that controls those events that cannot be controlled by the human being. The non-believer and the believer both breathe the same air, the same way. They get hungry. They have all the physiological needs. They grow old, they die, and return to dust. So, what are you in control of? This is the puzzle that man tries to wrestle with for vast amounts of time on this planet. And that is because when we are confronted by things that we cannot address ourselves, the mind looks for who to blame or who is in charge. And this is why you will hear people say, if God was God, and he's merciful, and he's all powerful, he's all able, why do bad things happen to good people? You've heard this, you know. Talk to somebody who has just lost a loved one. The other day, we heard of the air crash in India, and there are many others that go on. I think there has even been another crash after that. But think of all the people who on a normal day were going somewhere, enter a plane, and this God watches you as you pack your bags, prepare and say bye, or tell people I'll be there in, come pick me from the airport. And in a matter of minutes, they're gone. There's no distinction between who had cursed God and who had blessed God that morning, who spent the night in riotous living and who spent the night in prayer. In that one single act, the good and the bad are gone. The sinner and the righteous are all gone. Where is God in all this? And there are many things that would make us question, because that is one. I remember when I lived in the UK a long time ago, there was a bomb blast in a railway station, in a subway. And there is somebody who lost a child, and I think she was a believer, actually a minister of the word. And there are many situations which come our way that make us question the very existence of God. And this is where many people wonder if indeed God was there. Is he in control of anything in our lives? And if so, to what extent? Does he care about all the suffering that goes on? But even before we go into all that, the very fact that the world is organized in a cohesive way that we can actually be able to say, this is not random evolution. And I'm not even going into the whole argument about the theory of evolution. I think Darwin did a commendable job. But the reality is we are not here out of random evolution. If there was no intelligence that actually created and set in motion creation, how we would actually be the way we are. There is such order that we cannot question that there is intelligence behind all this. What baffles us is that we cannot control God. And man does not like that. We don't like something we can't control. So at this point, my major argument was on this verse 9 of John, that God is the true light, and he gives light to every human being that is born. Whether you're born in a palace, like you, or you're born in the rubbish dump, you both get the same light of life. You both get God deposited in you. And this will be the basis of my arguments as we go along with subsequent episodes, that God, by breathing himself into us, deposited himself in every living human being. We can debate, we can argue, but the reality is there is divinity within each one of us. A majority of Christians will believe that God comes to us when we probably have an encounter and we say we believe in God. Actually, that's a different thing altogether. Just because you wake up to an awareness of your divinity does not mean you didn't have it before. There are many things in life we wake up one day and discover, oh, I can do this. And before that, you believed you couldn't do. Even in Genesis chapter 1:26, where he says, let us create man in our own image, in our own likeness. There was no distinction. The Bible says there is neither Jew nor Gentile. And by setting that in the beginning, that was left for all mankind, that every human life is by design of the Creator, the mystery of birth. Same. The preparation we get in our mother's womb before we get into this world. So you may ask me, why is all this important? Why is it important to actually think about God? You just need to actually reflect on your own birth and realize there is life after earth. You know, one person told me about the Bible, and I don't even know where that came from, but he said that Bible simply means basic instructions before leaving earth. That is like the Bible is where God condensed all that we needed to know to prepare us for life after death, life after earth. It helps us also understand our divinity. Where were we before we came here? Because we were somewhere, and we are going somewhere. If you tell the fetus in the mother's womb, there is another world beyond here, they would simply laugh you off, because as far as they are concerned, this is their entire universe. They have never seen it. They may get glimpses that there is something else that goes on beyond these walls, just like the way we get fascinated with images of the galaxies and all that, and we feel like there's something, there's somewhere else, there's a spiritual dimension to all of us. We get it in our dreams. But to that fetus in the mother's womb, to tell it that there is another world where they will actually walk, not just float in this sea and be fed and feel good, they would think you are being crazy. It's the same thing. To be told that there is a world beyond the one we are in here in the physical, it sounds as confusing as it would be to us when we were in a mother's womb, being told that we'll come into a world where we will actually do all that we do today. But here we are. We are being prepared for a world that will be there, whether we know it, whether we accept it or not. A baby doesn't have to believe that it will be born for it to be born. As long as it's conceived, it will be born, unless, of course, the unthinkable happens. But the same way we are here, it is important to reflect on God. It's important to understand who God is and who you are and the relationship. I believe that man is man, but there is also divinity in every human being. Whether you be Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, pagan, or heathen, whatever it is you think you are, there is God inside of you. Maybe you may want to pause and think about Him and how you relate with Him according to your belief system. Until next time, this is Nelson Karanja for God and I, the Creative Locus.